Hey everyone, I might be a couple of minutes early, but I wanted to go ahead and hop on here, and that way if anyone isn't at all interested in listening to this, then they have a couple of minutes to get themselves situated, comfortable, grab a beer, whatever it is that you feel like you need to do in order to suffer through my first chapter. The reason I chose this book is it's a tough one. It's a tough one. Matter of fact, I'm reading through my first chapter and I'm almost crying. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. This was my therapy book when it came to the paranormal, not just regular life in general, but everything, okay? But everything that had to do with the paranormal, it was a very, very, very difficult book to write. I'm gonna wear my old lady glasses, okay? So I am going to go ahead, because I think there's some on there. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and start. And I'm in my bedroom, so it's quiet and I've got good light, so y'all can't see the good stuff, okay? I'm going to sit here in my bedroom and read y'all a story, okay? In this particular book, in Walking with Ghosts, I didn't do chapters. What I did was I did experiences. Granted, for the most part, they're in chronological order, which I think is important for you to understand the process. But man, I hit you with the punch first time, okay? So anyway, and excuse the hair and the roots, because for fuck's sake, right? I mean, what am I gonna do? I guess I'll go to Walmart at some point in time, get a hair color, just so I don't have to do this to you people. Okay, again, not a chapter. This first installment of the book is called He Who Sees. And just bear with me, okay? It's a tough one. Okay, are y'all ready? Let me know if you're ready, okay? Just somebody give me a thumbs up. Let me know if you're okay with this, if I'm not fucking it up already. Okay, He Who Sees, from Walking with Ghosts. And I wrote this in, I think, 2017. I think that sounds about right. It started long before my trip to England. The visitations from him, the watching, the waiting in the shadows. Hell, it started in another life, if I'm being honest. Only I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know until I spoke to Chris Loper from BPI, which is Beyond Perception Investigators. How Chris and I met is a story unto itself. I remember I was looking at some photos Gwen Clapper had sent me from their group link. I almost dropped my phone when I saw Chris. I immediately texted Gwen and sent her a picture of an illustration I drew over a year beforehand. The drawing was of a man who bore a striking resemblance to Chris. You see, Chris had only recently joined their team, and I didn't know him at all since he is very private. In fact, I had drawn the image of the man before I even knew Gwen. She was as astonished as I that I had foreseen this new member of their group months before he had even applied for the position. This odd turn of events got Chris and I to talking. We discussed the many reasons I may have seen him, what the purpose behind it may mean, and what the outcome of it would be. As we talked, I began to dream and have visions about him, snippets and images from the past that could mean only one thing. We had known each other before. Gwen and I had already come to the realization that we had spent previous lives with each other. The bond was that strong. It wasn't a stretch to think the same applied to Chris and I as well. Our talks turned into a daily thing, and we started to open up to each other. I told him of my dreams about our past together. We spoke of our fears, of the dark thoughts that ran through our minds, and in all honesty, of the things we couldn't tell another living soul. That is when the subject of him came up, and any peaceful night's sleep I had was meant to have vanished just like that. I know now he has always been there, hiding, waiting in the shadows for me to acknowledge his presence. Centuries ago, he did much the same, observing myself and those around me, measuring us, our will, our strength. Those centuries have faded into oblivion as our souls have reunited, spread across the globe, brothers, sisters, fathers, mothers, lovers of the past. My soulmates, each and every one, are all playing a very important part in the game we call life. Some of us have even seen him in person, in the daylight, but only 2 of us have ever fought him, and only 2 of us have won, for now. The night he re-entered my life, I'd been speaking to Chris. We had talked of my previous dream the night before, and of the man I had seen watching me. He stood in the distance, making no move to close the distance between us. I felt no fear. No move to close the distance between us. Not from him. I felt no fear, not from him or the place we were in. Looking back now, I feel as if he had altered it, somehow made the location benign and unaffected by reality. As far as my eye could see, there was nothing but lush green grass. It was long and swayed in the breeze. The sky was a cerulean blue, almost velvety in texture, and scattered fluffy clouds of the same brilliant white as his suit. He wore small, dark, round, rose-colored glasses that resembled something John Lennon might wear. I was so struck by the image he made that the absurdity didn't hit me until later. His soft, silver long hair was pulled back into a ponytail and hung over one shoulder. Random strands had escaped the tight confines of the leather tie holding it back. This gave him almost an angelic quality that was only betrayed by the cane he was holding with his right hand. It was black, with a carved snake wrapping around it. The snake's head rested in the firm grip of his hand, but I could see the blood-red jewel hidden behind its fangs, just as heavy as the emerald ring he wore. Next page. It felt like an eternity that we stood there, staring at each other. There were no words, no movement, not even a smile behind the neatly kept silver beard, just silence and a world of questions unspoken. Even if I wanted to move, I couldn't. The grass had woven its tiny blades around my feet and began traveling up my legs. I couldn't be sure if it was holding me still to keep me from going to him, or was it weighing me down so that he could get to me? Regardless, it didn't matter. The sun began to set, and as the blue sky morphed into a whirlwind of purples and reds, he backed away from me and faded into nothing. I awoke wondering what the hell had just happened. I have traveled in my dreams before, but this was much different. It felt more that I had been taken to this particular place than actually choosing to go on my own. A feeling of violation stayed with me the following days as I tried to make sense of what was happening. My confusion was so intense that I didn't even share it with those closest to me. I was no longer worried about anyone thinking I was crazy, but I honestly couldn't make heads or tails of this new visitor and what his intentions might be. Shortly after this experience, a friend of mine from London contacted me, told me that I was being watched. He described in full detail the man of whom I had dreamed. How this was even possible, I have no idea. The man had contacted him under the guise of a concerned relative. An uncle, maybe? I have to believe he knew I would see through this, as I'm quite aware of my relatives who have passed. Nor would any of these relatives be battling Chris, as the man had done in the past. I thanked my friend for the information and filed it back to be dealt with later. Later came exactly almost 2 weeks later as I found myself and Chris running toward the tunnels of what I know now to be the Hellfire Caves in London. Dressed all in black, we were forging our way deeper into the tunnels. I carried a small black bag and Chris was heavily armed as per usual. We were thieves. That much I could tell. Very close thieves, good friends. I could hear the people running behind us. I could feel their anger vibrating through the air and tickling my skin, and I loved it. The weight of the bag I carried slapped against my hip. It was heavy with wares that were not ours, but we wanted more, always more. We did our best to be quiet, but the excitement of the chase was almost too much. This was danger at its most base level, and we lived for it. There were scattered candles littering the way. Their flames cast shadows that licked the walls, creating monsters out of those who chased us. As they got closer, they slowed their pace. Their hushed whispers echoed in the confined space. I could hear the unevenness of my own heartbeat, and I pressed closer to the wall. Closer, closer, and then I woke. Sitting straight up in bed, my eyes adjusted to the low glow of the Christmas lights that had found a permanent home on my walls. I was home, that much was obvious, but I was somewhere else as well. I felt split apart, slices of me floating from one part of history to the next. I told all of this to Chris the next day. We talked about the details, and he told me of some of his more current experiences with the man, and of the battles they had fought against each other. It was hard for me to picture because thus far I had not had a negative experience with him. We laughed about it, and I made my opinions very clear. Chris's choice of weapon is anything with a blade, and he is more than adept at wielding it. Not seeing the man as a threat, it never occurred to me that he would be listening or how angry it would make him. I found out later that night when I was home all alone while my son was at his father's. I spent the majority of the night talking with friends on social media before I had finally decided to call it a night. Something felt very off, so I decided to sleep on the couch close to my front door. I'm not prone to fear, but I didn't feel right, not at all. And I tried to brush it off since I became fairly used to having visitors popping in and out at all hours. Yet something told me this was different, that I needed to have fear. I stayed awake as long as I could, somehow thinking that would help, but I just couldn't do it. My eyes were just too damn heavy. My mind tried to reason away what was happening, tried to compartmentalize the pain. The worst were the fingernails, half-inch daggers pressing into my skin. I wanted to scream out, but there was no air left in me. I was hollow, void. I felt hands everywhere, too many hands. My goddess, we only have 2 hands. How were there 5, 6, 8 hands? How the fuck is that possible? Pain traveled over every part of my body, running through my veins like acid. I no longer felt the couch underneath me as I was suspended in the air, held by anger, lies, deceit, and agony. I felt the tears slide down my face as my heart sank into reality. I was helpless against him, completely helpless. This horrible event played over and over for the next few weeks, each occurrence more brutal than the last. He had found a way in, tapped into my deepest, darkest fears, my history, my shame. He was using that to break me, and he almost succeeded too. I was at my wit's end and not really sure if I could mentally survive what was happening to me. The pain, the bruises were taking their toll. I was feeling less and less like myself every day. There really wasn't anything more frightening than feeling the slow death of who you are inside a body that refuses to give in. I had taken all I could and reached out to Chris again. I broke down and told him exactly what had been happening in my dreams and who was doing it. The last thing I expected was for him to get mad at me. Well, I mean, not mad at me, but mad. Just mad. He gave me my first of many stern talkings to. He reminded me of who I am and what I am, and that I was strong enough to stop this torture. He reminded me that what I had been through in my past made me even more powerful than I thought, because I had survived it. Funny how you forget things like that. I had been so caught up in this being something I had to deal with alone that it never occurred to me to actually deal with it. Funny, huh? To deal with him. I felt empowered for the first time in what seemed like an eternity. When he came to me the next time, I would be ready, damn it. He didn't make me wait. The previous bruises had yet to fade before new ones were there to replace them. I knew exactly where they would be. I knew the size. I knew the feel of them. I knew the strength it would take to inflict just enough pain to make me suffer without causing me to wake from my dream state. This son of a bitch had already put me through hell. It was going to take a lot more than a few bruises to make me turn tail and run this time. I did what I thought was impossible. I opened my eyes and looked straight into his. In an instant, we were both transported to a place I can only describe as hell. Not in the biblical sense, but in a way that makes my skin crawl. Fear and anguish dripped from the walls that had been blackened by flames, blood, and a myriad of other unspeakable things. I held his gaze, never wavering, even as he rose in the air in front of me. Giant wings erupted from his back, spanning a distance of 10 feet or more across. The air around him undulated like a mirage in the desert. There was no solid ground, only platforms of stone in different shapes and sizes. One in the distance held 2 fighters, all dressed in black, hoods to feet, the whites of their eyes the only visible sign of humanity. The slash and clank of swords almost broke my concentration. Almost. I stood there, naked and trembling, but not with fear. I felt the rage boil up inside of me until I thought I would explode with it. Raising my hands up, fingers splayed, I focused every bit of the shame, violation, and humiliation I'd felt until my hands began to burn and glow. I felt the strength of 1,000 ancestors seeping into me, pushing me to do what only I could do. In amazement, I watched as lightning, violet in color, shot from the palms of my hands straight into his torso. The scream that followed will haunt me until the day that I die. Guttural and raw, it scraped my bare skin like a million razor blades. The force of it nearly knocked me over, but the sight of him melting right in front of me held me in place. Like a taper candle, he began to drip. Beads of flesh, blood, and bone traveled downward, distorting his face, his body. The violet light I was shooting into him changed to a brilliant white as it forced its way out of his back, burning his wings. I watched as the flames grew higher. I felt my power grow, swell. Its crescendo vibrated his body until he burst in a cloud of ashes, and then there was silence. I had almost forgotten about him, but somehow he always makes his way back into my thoughts. I'm reminded by those he chooses to contact since I refuse to acknowledge him in the way he wishes. He's made his presence known to my friend Jana Parker through dreams and daytime sightings. Gwen Clapper has seen him as well with her own 2 eyes. I've been contacted by people halfway across the world who know nothing of his presence, yet they give me a perfect description of him and state his concerns for me. But the worst are the sightings of him in my home. He has been seen standing behind me during shows and vlogs I've done on YouTube by people who know absolutely nothing about him. I don't really know what to say or do about that. I can only stay vigilant. I can only wait for the next time in which I must face him again. So now you know. For those who have never read the book, that is what you would call my first chapter of Walking with Ghosts. That was me breaking people in to the fact that if you are involved in this field, that if you have had multiple lives, that if you have any abilities whatsoever, or even if you don't think you do, there is something else out there. There are many, many, many layers to the reality that we know, the reality that was the past, the reality that is at this present time, the future, that they all overlap. They all do something really crazy, and at any given point in time, something or somebody can come in that just knocks you for a loop, and you don't know what to do with that information. And it's not pretty. It's not like the TV shows that you see at all, okay? That's not even the most frightening thing that happens in this book, if that tells you anything. Do y'all have any questions about that? Anything you want to put out there? Anything you want me to address? Robert, you'll be able to listen to it, because, I mean, when I finish this, I'm just going to share it, so it'll be there again. But is there anything anybody wants to know? Toss it out there, because I don't talk. Matter of fact, this is in the book. That's the first chapter of the book, but I have never said those words out loud. Ever. So, I can't believe I just did it. I really can't. I can't believe I just did it. Just know that now don't get me wrong. You can have dreams. You can just have really poopy dreams. You can have really bad dreams, and they can make you feel a certain way too. But when people are contacting you from 4,000 miles away, describing a person to a T, whose picture is now in the book that I drew, that they knew nothing of, it's not a dream. So it is what it is. That's what I deal with. I'm not so much on that level anymore. He knows better. He learned. So don't fuck with me. But I had to learn how to deal with it. I had to get past that. I had to get past the more, for lack of a better way of putting it, the more human aspect of me, and reach for something deeper, and save my life. So anyway, I need to go vape or something, because I'm a little bit weirded out by that. I can't believe I actually just said all that in public. So thank y'all for listening. I'm going to finish this out, and let's see here. Yeah, through dreams. Exactly. You're exactly right, Robert. And if that freaked any of y'all out, I do apologize. Maybe I should have put a disclosure statement on there or something, saying, hey, if you've got triggers, you might not want to watch this. But y'all know me, so I would never want to hit your triggers, but it is what it is. So, and quite a few of y'all have read the book. So anyway, that was enough of that for me today. We'll give it a couple of days, and I'll do another one. Oh, let's see. Oh, Johnny, you let Donna listen? Oh, wait, okay. Oh, bless her. Oh, bless her. Joe, honey, give Donna a big old hug and a kiss for me, and tell her I love her, okay? Oh, you're welcome, Tammy. You're welcome. Yeah, I'm going to go and decompress for a minute. That was a rough one. Okay, but I love y'all, and I wanted to share. So, we will do this again in a couple of days. Let me get my wits about me. Okay? Anyway, I love you guys. Mwah. Bye.